Hello everyone, today is December 5th, 2021. I'm here with Alex Arthur. Alex is a sales engineer, MBA student, and president of his homeowners association. Thanks for coming on the podcast, Alex.
Good to be here, Karosh. Thank you. And it's a pleasure to be on and an honor to be on the 50th episode of your show. So,
yes.
Congrats to that. Cheers.
Cheers.
To episode 50.
Cheers to episode 50. Wow, who would have thought we would get here?
I did. I thought you'd like it.
Thank you.
I'm stoked for you.
Thank you. It's pretty exciting.
Yeah.
It's
What have you learned over the past year?
It's a lot of things.
Of this?
A lot of things. I think it's subtle things. One of the biggest things I took away was like healthcare.
Oh, okay.
Someone told me about Cal Covered, which saved me for a couple months. Have you heard of Cal Covered?
I've heard of it. I came across it a couple of times as a medical device sales representative years ago, but at the time Cal Covered didn't cover our patients, so I didn't understand what that plan looked like or what it was about. So
Got it.
I only heard about it, disqualified some patients at the time, but I don't know anything more than that, other than it's like an insurance.
Yes, it's insurance. If you don't have employment, it's a pretty good one. It's way more affordable. Have you heard of COBRA?
I have heard of COBRA, yeah, okay.
COBRA is like full, it's not full, but it's like very high cost healthcare.
Okay, wow.
Like $600 plus a month.
Wow.
And that's kind of, I don't know if that's the general standard, but
That's expensive.
That's very expensive. CA Covered is like, depending on your financial situation, you could get it as low as like $1 a month.
Whoa.
So I think possibly zero if you have no income.
Wow.
Which is,
That's great.
That's healthcare. That's universal healthcare.
That's basically universal, yeah.
So
that's cool. And did you use it? Did you ever end up paying with it?
I never used it. I was on it.
Okay.
I never used it. I don't think it would have been responsible of me to like
go out of your way to use it. Or
no. To allow myself to not have healthcare.
Of course. Cheers. Yeah. Cheers to being covered, bro.
Cheers.
Of course. Of course.
But that was a huge thing because I was fully ready to pay $600 a month for COBRA, and I was like, then I had a podcast with a guy named Matthew Skaken, and he was like, yeah. I told him, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna have to start getting my own healthcare, and he was like, all my friends were on California Covered, Obamacare, because it's a
form of that.
It's California's form of Obamacare.
Wow.
Yes.
So that's a good thing you learned?
Yes, that was a huge thing.
Okay.
Yes.
That's a huge thing, yeah.
Some other things, too, but that was, like, the big specific one that actually translated into a lot of savings.
Fantastic.
Yes. But you're an MBA student now.
Yeah, that's been a huge jump. I similarly got into my MBA the same way that you got into Cal Covered, just kind of by an offhand sort of situation. I saw the email come through. I'd considered doing an MBA for about 2 or 3 years, but never really felt like jumping into that pool of people who are studying for the GRE, studying and spending time on that. They're also working, and then they're waiting to hear back from a school on whether or not they're going to get accepted. And that was something I kind of was postponing. And because of COVID, these GMAT and GRE requirements often were being waived. And when I got the email that said that this is going to be waived, I figured strike while the iron's hot.
Yes.
Try to get some value out of it. They were also throwing in some money, so I jumped at the opportunity, went through the interview process. There was definitely some obstacles that they tried to throw throw in there. Played a little reverse psychology, a little salesmanship. Went a long way. There was sort of this. There was this problem that the interviewer put in front of me, which was that, well, you really ought to know which industry you want to go in, and you really want to know what you're doing and what you're going to do with your MBA. And I was like, oh, okay, well, really almost tried to dissuade me out of it, right? Like after a long conversation, that was kind of like her gut punch, right?
Nice.
And so I just absorbed that and said, well, maybe it's not for me. Maybe it's not for me because maybe it's so specific that for someone like me who I consider myself somewhat of a generalist, I always have. I like to know a lot about, at least a little about a lot of things, or supplement my knowledge and become adept at things. Maybe it's not good for me. Maybe it's too specific. And that kind of phrase, flip it on its head, kind of took her by surprise, and she kind of wanted to win me back at that point. Nice. And so then it was just like, that was at the end of the interview too, so it kind of, the timing was really good. But that was just sort of like a sales tactic. Sometimes you have to make sure you're not coming across as desperate, and this comes across in all walks of life. So
yes,
it worked. And so now I'm in that MBA program. I've been learning a lot, taking it a lot more seriously than my undergraduate studies.
It's crazy how that works.
Yeah, I think just going abroad and seeing how other people around the world live, you could take those opportunities for granted growing up here in Southern California. I know I did.
Yeah, I did.
And coming back from studying in Eastern Europe, where the opportunities are much thinner, fewer and far between, I realized that I need to capitalize.
I was thinking the same thing when I did my work in Africa. You see what's going on there. You see, people living in shacks and huts and defecating right by where they live and sleep, and there being no plumbing or Eastern Europe is a little better than that, but it goes to show that society can fall pretty hard.
Yeah.
And we have a lot of opportunities as Americans.
Yeah, it can be really tough regardless of where you're at. Everybody's going through that human experience, and
yes,
it can be tough to realize what you have sometimes too.
Very tough, and it's a lot easier to realize that when you see the other side of the grass, mm-hmm. where it's actually less green.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a huge wake-up call because
huge,
it's if all we see is our home, and then we have nothing to compare it to, and we don't know possibly what improvements we can make, mm-hmm. or like we've been saying for the last couple minutes, what things we do well and things we should cherish and be grateful for.
Yeah, that brings me to my next point. Things we see, things we do well. Kind of wanted to talk about how those concepts fit nicely into the overarching philosophy of design. And one of the maxims that you hear in design is function over form. And so kind of wanted to go into that topic, if that's all right.
Yes. What is function over form?
So function over form, a great example of function over form and where form being a part of function is the Green and Green home in Los Angeles. It's a beautiful craftsman style home, unlimited budget, built in, I want to say, the 1920s or maybe even the 1800s, almost 100 years old. This residence is amazing, and throughout the house, this beautiful craftsman style design is punctuated with these amazing concepts for utility. You've got drawers that pull out of benches, right? You've got little secret closets that come out of the hallway that you would have never thought of putting there. You've just got all these different ways of enhancing the utility of this house. And when you're talking about things and doing things well, I really think of design and I really think of function over form in that sense. Does that kind of convey that?
Yes. And this house in LA was the goal of it, to implement function over form.
Yeah, and it's interesting that I say that, because when you see this house, you'd almost think there's no way it's function over form. I mean, it just looks too beautiful. It looks too amazing.
Wow.
So when taken to its extreme, this concept can actually really help elevate form, in my opinion. But this is, two different sides of philosophy here. And I think that if you
Say that again?
So it's two different sides of philosophy, right? Some philosophies are about aesthetics, and some philosophies are about utility.
Yes.
And so I believe in the philosophy of utility, and
Yes.
I believe that aesthetics has utility if implemented properly, right? So I think that that's the interesting thing, right? If we focus on utility, you can bring aesthetics along for the ride. But if you focus on aesthetics, it's hard to bring utility along for the ride. So I think you can double up your value by going down this utility route, if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And it's interesting because aesthetics are so highly valued, like you said, and you're a cognitive science undergraduate, so you understand neurons and neural links and neural pathways.
We're thinking the same thing, my friend.
And we have roughly 11 billion neurons,
Yep.
and 10 billion of the 11 billion are visual based.
I don't know the exact proportions. I can't quote you on that. Don't quote me on it, but we're visual creatures, right?
Yes.
Our eyes are so important.
Yes.
So, yeah, it's easy to get lost in the aesthetics of things.
It is easy. But I was going to ask, you say it.
No, you please.
I was going to ask, you said you think we could double our value by implementing utility? Yeah,
so starting off with utility, you can kind of double up on your value there, because obviously aesthetics has value, right?
Yes.
There is some function. There is some value. I'm going to start using these words not interchangeably, but they're kind of synonymous, function and value. Right?
Okay. How are they synonymous?
So when you think of function, you think of utility. When you think of utility, you think of value.
Yes.
And so these words they're kind of in this synonymous web, right? If you go to a thesaurus and you look up a word, and you look up a synonym of that word, you'll start seeing, and you click down a click path of different synonyms, you'll see that these synonyms are all related to each other.
Okay.
Right? Synonyms are an interesting way to get a definition for a word, right? Because it's not the same word, but you build these definitions of these terms based on these other terms around them. It's very similar to how our brain works, right? Is like one neuron going to do everything in your brain? No. Is one set of neurons going to do everything in your brain? No. But one set of neurons is going to be able to fire more easily when one of the neurons in that set fires. Right? So any one neuron in a set, if it fires, another neuron might fire. This is the maximum. Cells that fire together wire together. This is the main refrain of cognitive science, meaning that if you throw one thing in to a lake, you throw another rock into the lake, both rocks end up into the lake. Even if they ended up in the pond at different locations, they both end up making ripples on the surface of this lake. It's the same with your brain. If one triggering event triggers one neuron in a group of neurons, another event could trigger another neuron in that group, but at the end of the day, that group of neurons is going to fire regardless. So we're thinking utility, we're thinking value, we're thinking function, right? All of these terms, they're part of a set of words that is lodged in our brain that has a certain meaning. You say any one of those words and that part of your brain is going to start going off. So that's kind of what I'm getting at when I say interchangeability. That's sort of synonyms here. Does that make sense?
That makes sense.
Okay. So when I'm thinking function over form, I'm thinking about cognitive science. I'm thinking about what I'm seeing. I'm thinking about aesthetics. I'm thinking about, okay, is this item going to give me utility? Is this tool going to give me utility? Item, tool, kind of another synonymous term, right? But when we think of tool, now we're thinking of, that's actually a gateway to a lot more things, right? Am I making sense when I say the word tool?
Yes. What do you mean by tool?
Tool can mean many things, right?
Yes.
It's a double meaning, or triple meaning, or quintuple meaning, right?
Infinite meaning.
Infinite meanings. You could think of this bottle could be a tool. This microphone's a tool. A software application is a tool. A cognitive behavioral therapy technique is a tool.
Yes.
So there's many different things, and so utility and aesthetics, they can combine in interesting and beautiful ways. But really, if you lead with utility and bring aesthetics along for the ride, you get so much more value out of it. Is this concept starting to kind of maybe form a little bit better?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It is. I understand.
Okay.
It's kind of like.
It's a little esoteric right now.
What do you mean by esoteric?
Just out there. It's like kind of.
No, it makes sense because utility
right.
is going to get us farther.
Bring us down to earth.
It is gonna.
I'm floating away.
No. We're where we I think need to be, which might not be on Earth.
I love it.
But yes. So utility is important, and I personally love utility, but
some examples.
We're hunters, so it's just, when you're out there hunting for 3-4 plus hours, it's aesthetics mean much less after 3 to 4 hours with like 20 pounds, 25 pounds on your back.
Very true. Except for the aesthetics of your camo.
Except for the aesthetics of the camo, yes. I should get some better camo.
Right, some mind-blowing stuff right there when it comes to utility, aesthetics, the combination.
It matters. Yeah, it does matter.
It matters in some cases, yeah.
So, but at the end of the day, if we don't have utilities,
what's the point?
What's the point? I mean, and I'm an engineer by trade and, education, so you
speak the language of utility.
I speak the language of utility, and the language of aesthetic is something that I've come to gain more appreciation for. I still need to get much better at learning how to implement aesthetics into products that I create.
Same.
It's not easy.
Yeah.
And
no, you're right. It's not easy to implement aesthetics into things because that kind of takes the other side of the brain. And when you're, one side of the brain is kind of considered the creative half, and one side of the brain is kind of considered the pragmatic half. And when you're trained in engineering, your pragmatic half of your brain is going to be firing on a regular basis.
Yes.
And you're kind of building that into your daily life.
Yes.
And how hard is it to change our patterns? So it's very difficult, right?
Yeah,
and that's what I love about being a generalist, kind of, again, going back to that, because I feel like I get so much utility from learning different things, focusing in different areas, kind of bouncing back and forth. I mean, obviously you don't want to be an idiot in anything that you claim to know. Obviously you don't want to get yourself in too deep. Hopefully I'm not getting myself in too deep anywhere here in this conversation, no. But it's great to bounce around like that because it gives you the opportunity to flex those different pathways, those different muscles, those mind muscles, if you will.
Yes. And that's not easy.
No, it's not. It's hard.
It's very hard. But I think we need to do it because we risk, digging ourselves into a hole And I think as we grow and mature and take on higher responsibilities, we really can't continue to dig ourselves into that hole. And we have to have a wider sense of vision, a higher sense of awareness of what's going on around us. And because one of the, I'm an engineer, and technology is advancing very quickly.
Yeah, it's crazy.
It's crazy. Things are happening constantly. Development seems to be, just being implemented. Maybe not like at a really crazy rate, but still it's been so consistent and so dramatic in change that it's just like, boom, something new all the time. And
you said it, brother.
Yes.
So things that have happened since we graduated college. I brought this up a little bit earlier before we started filming, and that is the evolution of the CX acronyms, right? We're talking about UI UX as kind of the foundation, and UI UX, that stands for user interface / user experience. User interface is kind of the beginning of this story, and it kind of starts in aesthetics, actually, if you think about it. User interface was something that Microsoft operating systems started on. We had Apple operating systems using, right? These are the different interfaces that we had on these tools that were known as computers back in the 90s and the 80s. I mean, I'm a 90s child, so
yes.
I think 90s when I think early computers, but they've been around before that even.
Yes.
Once they started developing a better graphical user interface, we started getting the enhancement of user interfaces in general, things that were easier to use, easier to click, easier to touch, and over time, these tools and these interfaces had people working on them that realized we need to collect data about how these tools work.
Yes.
And what better place to collect data from than a computer, right? It literally lives data. It is data. It's a machine based on data, inputs and outputs. And so being able to collect data on a user interface led to the development of user experience, right? That whole genre started opening up, right? And user experience is all about the utility gained from a system that presents to you a visual field, right? An aesthetic, right? So the aesthetics of UI turned into UX, right? The utility, high utility UI is something that a UX designer would try to design, an engineer, right? Someone who's thinking, how can I get my users from point A to point B as quickly and effectively as possible so that they will use this tool, so that I can sell it effectively, or so that my sales team can sell it. That would be like what a CTO would do, early on. Can we design Microsoft Excel to be really user-friendly, right? How can we arrange the buttons at the top of the screen? This is the beginnings of UX and UI. So I'd say that around 2010 to maybe probably even earlier, but maybe 2010 to 2014, we started hearing UX and UI come up all the time. That was a hot button topic. That was something that was really popular in the cognitive science department at UCSD when I graduated in 2014 and beyond. It was still quite popular as a field, as an area of focus for cognitive science majors to go out into the tech world and the tech industry in. And today, if you're in tech and you're listening to this, you probably work with people who are in the UX and UI field. Really what happened around 2016 was we saw development where UX and UI, as this sort of theory and this terminology, which is a very holistic terminology, right? It's taking in aesthetics and it's taking in utility, and it's kind of combining them. It's a holistic philosophy and a way of approaching problems was extrapolated on, and companies developed CX. You've probably heard of that, right?
No.
Customer experience.
Okay.
So you heard, you started seeing customer experience representatives or customer success managers or customer success representatives, right? They were substituting in the word success for experience because it sounds a little classier when you say customer success than customer experience.
Okay.
When you're trying to get in front of a client, right? But customer experience is something that sort of it's the more technical angle of that sort of marriage between customer success and customers' experiences. We're talking about taking a UI and a UX and going beyond just what the Apple interface does for me when I open it up. It's easy to use. It's like something that I like. It's something that I get satisfaction from. That's sort of the whole Apple gamut, right? Is to sell their clients on an experience using technology. That's the notion, at least. And taking that and evolving that concept, which Apple was so successful with, making it one of the richest companies in the world when we graduated college. I think it was the richest company in the world in terms of assets at the time.
2011 or 2015. Yes.
Yeah. So through that 4 or 5 year span, it was number one for a while.
For our college experience, I think it was the richest.
And taking that concept and applying it more holistically to an entire company's philosophy, you develop the CX philosophy. So you develop this customer experience philosophy, and that's really where utility and even aesthetics to an extent come into play. Aesthetics actually kind of makes more of a comeback in CX in a way. In the sense that this is getting really esoteric. It's not directly what you're seeing visually, but it's what you're feeling, right? Sometimes aesthetics is about what you feel, right? And that goes back to like looking at a painting. Does the painting make you feel something when you look at it? That's aesthetics, right? Does it make me feel something? A customer experience, you want to feel something. You want to feel heard. You want to feel taken care of. You want to feel like this company that you're giving your money to understands what you need as a consumer, right? That's customer experience. And they can track their customers' experience by tracking things like customer satisfaction, by tracking repeat activity from customers, right? Are their customers coming back over and over and over and over? That's really what customer success managers do, is they keep clients coming back. They keep those contracts rolling. So this is kind of the stage we're at right now. I feel like in terms of technology and in terms of like how to sell technology, how to give people technology that they're going to keep using, is you really want to focus on customer experience. So that's kind of my little spiel on that. I hope that made sense. I kind of been blabbering, but
no, that made sense, and it stems from a combination of the interface and their experience.
Yeah.
And those two aspects together created customer experience, which customer success is another synonym of that.
Yeah.
And that's, Apple, that was their marketing product, and they killed it and made them the most successful and the richest company in the world.
Yeah, exactly. You got it. And companies that are going to do really well in the future know how to capitalize on that experience, that customer experience. And that's kind of what Tesla was bringing to the market for a long time, right? It's like, we sell a car, we sell solar panels, we sell batteries. We have supercharging stations for your car so that you can buy our car, you can charge it at your house, you can drive it up and down the coast of California, and you can charge it on the way. That's an experience. That's a customer experience. Yeah, it's like going to Disneyland and being able to ride all the rides, get pay with your watch, go into your room, do all this. It's like you just feel immersed into this technology and to this experience and into these companies as a consumer, right? So this brings it back to healthcare. This brings me to healthcare, actually.
Okay.
So this is an interesting term that I just found out about this year, just a few months ago in September, when I went to Michigan. Shout out to our friends Kat and Matt in Michigan.
Yes.
Holding it down. Kat's getting her MBA.
I think they just beat Ohio State for like the first time in a long time. I think they're ranked really high. I don't know how highly they're ranked, but and Ohio State was huge.
Ohio State's, it's hard to beat Ohio State.
I think they hadn't beat them in a few years. So
that's a big game. That's a big win. Yeah. Big dub.
Nice job.
Go Michigan.
Yeah, go Michigan.
Cool. At the end of that trip, I was waiting at a bus stop, and a girl walked up. I think her name's Simi, shorthand for her name. Simi and I started talking, and I asked her where she was from, what does she do. She's telling me she was a PhD I think she's in her final years of her PhD program, and she's at Johns Hopkins. And I was like, damn, that's awesome. Like, that's respect, that's a really incredible school, especially a school to get a PhD at.
Yes.
And she's getting her PhD in healthcare, healthcare outcomes or something like that, using like data. It's really, really intense. It's actually just two words, but it's basically like using data to drive healthcare outcomes.
Okay.
So I can't remember what the phrase is, but it's a really fascinating major. We got into talking about it and connected over.
Could you repeat it one more time?
It's basically improving healthcare outcomes using data.
Okay. I can see how that comes into play and how it was created.
Yeah. So it's and especially now, kind of like we're pivoting from customer experience. We're talking about healthcare outcomes. We're talking about PX.
What's PX?
Patient experience.
Patient experience?
Yes.
Is this specifically to do with medicine?
In the field of medicine. It's very new.
Wow.
So this is a new, interesting term that you're definitely going to want to hashtag underneath this video, because it's not being talked about a lot yet. It's new. You're an early newcomer to this
Nice.
phrase. The thing about healthcare is it lags behind other technologies and other fields.
Okay.
Because people's lives are on the line every day.
Yes.
It's hard
priorities.
It's their bigger priorities. It's hard to take risks on new technology when that person could die in the next 5 minutes if they don't get air.
Yes.
So, it can move more slowly, and it lags about 10 years behind the general trends of the market. So, if you think about what we were talking about earlier, we were talking about UX UI in 2010 to 2014 and 15, right? We're talking about the CX evolution in 2015, 2016. It's going to be 2022. So we're talking about 6, 7, maybe 8 years if you talk about the early years of CX, after CX, but we're talking about right around 10 years after the concept of UX has come out, user experience, like not come out, but really popular, right? So we're talking about 10 years, and we're talking about patient experience. And we were talking about healthcare earlier and how important it is to be covered with insurance and how important it is for people to have successful healthcare outcomes, right? There's people getting their PhDs in this field, right, using data. So patient experience is going to be something that I think we see a lot more of in the future. I think it's an exciting concept. I don't know that much about it, but just understanding what we were talking about in terms of utility, aesthetics, and customer experience, right? The marriage of UI, UX, and then customer experience, and now patient experience, right? We're talking about this whole new field that affects every human on planet Earth. Every human is concerned with their health.
Yes.
PX is the evolution of all of these things.
Wow.
And it's really going to be affecting our everyday lives at some point soon, I think.
It can be very broad.
It can be very broad. Yeah.
It could be being in the hospital as in your last moments of your life, or it could be, being... do you think it could be something like for health and fitness.
Oh, for sure. They're good. All these fields are going to start adopting this type of terminology as soon as they see that it is bringing value, right? Thinking in a different way is a tool, right? That's a cognitive tool.
Yes.
As soon as you reframe your thinking, you can change how you perceive the world.
Yes.
And when you change how you perceive the world, you change what you get from the world. That's a tool.
Absolutely. And it creates so many new paths that really were invisible before.
Yeah. Philosophy.
Great
for creating new ideas.
Great for creating new ideas. Great for trying to get yourselves out of a funk.
Yeah.
It's philosophy's huge.
Yeah.
Do you have any philosophy that you enjoy or any?
Yeah. So, this is so self-aggrandizing. I'm about to do something.
What does self-aggrandizing mean?
It's basically arrogance.
Nice.
I've been reading a lot of Frank Herbert's books. He wrote Dune because the movie was coming out. My mom's a big reader. My mom had heard about rumors about this movie coming out through some contacts she had at Disney who are really into the media world, and she's a big reader, and someone told her, this is one of the greatest books I've ever read.
Wow.
Telling her all these concepts about it. She said, okay, I got to read it. She read it, started talking to my wife and I about it. My wife read it. She told me how great it was. My wife loves sci-fi, and I was like, okay, I guess I got to read it. I read the first book. Actually, I listened to it on Audible, and holy shit. Frank Herbert, what a fucking guy. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
Were you the one telling me about this a few days ago? Because
I might have been. It's possible.
I think you weren't. I think someone else recommended this book to me.
It's amazing. This series is amazing. And
Dune?
Dune. Yeah.
What's amazing about it?
It's more like what's not amazing about it. Every single line that he writes feels like it carries just weight.
Damn.
And it's so dense, but at the same time so exciting. So it's this incredible marriage of this utility, this dense utility, but this exciting aesthetic, right? It's this marriage of these two concepts together, like a green and green home. It just does everything you could want in a single package. You really get, you really kill two birds with one stone. You feel good, but then you're also learning something at the same time when you're listening to this book.
What are you learning?
So, I would say that he was way ahead of his time.
When was this written?
He wrote the first book in 1965. Okay. He wrote the last one in 1986. So he wrote this series over the course of 20 years, easily. And talked about environmentalism, planet environment, economics, the philosophy of governing, just technology, the storage of data. In the 1960s, he was thinking about this stuff.
Wow.
He was thinking about how computers would be treated in the future in the 1960s.
Wow.
He was thinking about how history works, how history looks back on its leaders, thinking about anatomy, biology, physiology, hormones, drugs, all these different varying concepts, and it's all in relation to the human race, which has populated numerous, he says, universes, and he uses the term universes in his book. I feel more like galaxies is more appropriate based on physics, but call it universes if you want to. I don't care, Frank Herbert. Tell me the story. It's amazing regardless. You can easily gloss over certain details like that. It still holds the test of time, especially considering the weight of his philosophies in this book. It's kind of hard to describe, honestly, for me. I could talk for days, and I don't think I could even get close to the heart of it. It's fascinating.
Wow, that's pretty interesting. Yeah. It combines, real world philosophy with a science fiction novel in a very effective way.
Oh yeah. It's great. The central component in this universe's economic system is a drug called spice, and spice extends lives, grants people prescience, the ability to see into the future. It does all sorts of things for the people who use it. They put it in their food. They weave clothes out of it. They do all sorts of things with it. But it's created from these. It's created on a planet called Dune, where life is very inhospitable. It's very hard to acquire spice. So all the things that go into acquiring spice kind of are what drive this storyline.
Wow. That sounds interesting.
It's really great.
Wow. Dune. All right. Yeah. I'll have to check that.
Yeah. I don't know how we got there, but...
I think we started talking about philosophy, and then you brought up Dune.
Oh, Frank Herbert. Yeah. I don't know if I should go into self-aggrandizement. I guess one of the quotes that I love from Frank Herbert is, they use it in the trailer for the movie, "A great man does not seek to lead, he's called to it." And the reason I say that is, this is too much. This is way too much.
Just say it.
So, I kind of want to bring this actually back to, really get away from this, but bring it back to sort of utility and value, right? There's sort of that other meaning of function, utility, value that I brought up earlier. So as the president of my HOA, it's really important for me to bring value to my community.
Yes.
I did not go into the election with the goal of becoming the president. I didn't even really ever harbor many thoughts about sitting on the board, but it seemed like the right time to get involved because there were a lot of people in the community that were unhappy with just the way things are carrying on. And I wanted to try to bring some solace to the people of my community and help them, because they're older and technology moves really fast.
Yes.
And when the election results came out and I saw that I had been elected to the board, I realized, oh man, this is real. I'm going to have to do this. And it kind of was heavy on me in that moment. And so once we had our first meeting, someone said, "Do you want to be president?" I said, "No, I just kind of want to be a board member." And they were like, "Well, I don't want to be the president. You should be the president." And I said, "Oh my goodness. Okay, I'll do it. I'll be the president, I guess." It has been quite a ride. It's been like an additional job.
Wow.
On top of my job and on top of the MBA, I have this other job. Yes. On top of being a husband and owning a home and all the things that come along with being a homeowner, there's always upkeep there as well. So yes. It's a lot going on. But what I see here is I see the opportunity to bring value to the community.
Yes.
As effectively as possible by executing on a few key areas, just 3 key areas. And that would be, just enhancing our properties management platform, whether that's using the existing business model that we have or going to a new business model is yet to be determined. Regardless, what we need to do is make sure that whatever business model we use, that the platforms that we put in place are effective, because technology is advancing at a very rapid pace. We need to be able to keep up with that pace as a corporation. And we need to be able to store our data. We need to be able to retrieve our data. We need to be able to track our data.
Yes.
And for that, we need a very strong platform that we know how to use.
Yes.
That brings me back to customer success. We need to have a good relationship with our customer success manager for whatever platform we implement.
Yes. And then what?
Yeah, that's
continue.
it. No. So that's one key component. Another key component is planning for the future is part of that. Environmentalism, as I brought up, in Frank Herbert was thinking about this in the 1960s with Dune. The environment in which we live is very important to think about. Here in San Diego, we live in a dry climate. Water is expensive. We have a lot of sun. Those two things are the other 2 parts of my sort of 3 pronged value proposition. So in addition to a platform, we need to be able to capture the energy from the sun. That means solar panels. We already pay for the energy of about a third of the buildings on our property. That's about 40 buildings. We pay SDG&E directly for the energy. Well, if we had solar panels on those roofs, that would save us money.
Did you hear that? Actually, I was at a fundraiser earlier today for Jill Galvez. She's running for mayor of Chula Vista. She was saying that SDG&E might implement an aspect to where the solar panels are no longer, no longer allowed on the roofs. And the reason that is because there's no storage in San Diego. So right now, as there's an excessive amount of energy being created,
pushed back into the grid,
but there's no effective storage system. So I'm not sure the exact implementation, but she was saying very soon the ability to get solar panels on buildings is going to be.
And we've got to act fast.
Yes, got to act fast. Another thing is EV chargers. I mean, that is like, we in the last year, this new administration has unsubsidized gasoline, and I believe there's other aspects to it, but I believe we're starting to see like rising gas prices, and so. Electric vehicles, I mean, they make more sense today than ever before.
Yeah, and it's like you said, if there's no place to put the energy, then why not invest in EV chargers, right? Yes. Push the energy into those,
Into the cars.
A car is probably one of the most energy gobbling tools that a single human interacts with on a daily basis for the average person, right? It's going to gobble a lot of energy, to get you from point A to point B. You're going to want to drive down a freeway. Maybe you want to drive fast. I like driving fast. I like experiencing the ride, so anything that you're going to experience like that, those aesthetic things are going to require more energy out of the system. So it's critical that we're able to, as a corporation, as an HOA, to deal with the energy demands of our community. So I think implementing solar, at least in phases, is huge. Getting the buildings that, we have about 120 buildings. Getting the buildings that we are contractually obligated to pay the energy for equipped with solar panels could be huge for us. That could really alleviate the pressure on us from that bill that we pay every month to SDG&E. So that's a huge value proposition. Yes. And last but not least, also related to the environment is drought resistance. When it comes to an HOA, the bulk of the expenses are going to go into landscaping. That's kind of like why you pay for an HOA, right? Is you want to make your aesthetics, your landscaping look beautiful.
Yes.
Right? You want it to look good. Now, this is one of the few areas, landscaping, that you could say you could shoot for form and you can kind of actually bring function along with it, right? There's actually a lot of functional value of having great landscaping. You get shade, you get lower temperatures, you get wind resistance, you get cleaner air. All these things help prevent, other outside miasmic forces from coming into your... Miasma is
exterior forces.
Miasma is like a term for like bad air and gross air. It's kind of like an old term. It's not really...
Okay.
It's not really scientific, but
okay.
But it can kind of keep your community clean, and so it's important though to also consider where we live.
Yes.
We're in a drought.
A very bad one. I don't think it's rained here in a very long time. Like this 2-3 months has been very bad.
It's been
noticeable.
Dry. Yeah, it's been very dry. And we need to save on water, period.
Yes, period.
And we need to be thinking for the future. We need to be prepared. So that's the last aspect of this kind of vision that I have for the community that's really based on these three-pronged areas is creating a drought-resistant landscape that kind of ties into the sense of, hey, we can kind of supply our own energy, and our community is really robust when it comes to tracking our utility usage and tracking our data and being easy to use for our clients coming, our members that live here, right?
Yes.
It brings people into the community, and when we can implement a plan like that, that's going to raise the value of everyone's home, right?
Much
everybody
more
who
so.
lives here is going to
There's solar
rise
panels
up.
and EVs on everyone's roof. It's like the value of your home. Person with the Tesla car is going to be like,
Yes.
yes. It's like, if I had an EV, it's like, at least for the next, I think it makes sense. And it's cost savings in the end.
Yeah. It's a long-term
value. It is a long-term value. And if you want to sell your house, it's a short-term value. If any of your neighbors just like say, put that up and then sell your house, it's like, you're going to be able to sell it for
a lot more. So you're getting value whether you look short-term or you look long-term.
Yes.
It's just pure value.
Yes.
Pure utility.
Nice. How
Very
have
functional.
you proposed this? Actually, I have another question before you ask.
Yeah, go ahead.
Drought-resistant landscape. What does that look like in your vision?
So that is less grass, really, what it comes down to.
Unfortunately.
Yeah. Grass is it's a symbol. It's an aesthetic symbol. It actually has almost zero functionality. It's almost all form, no function. When you really think about it, grass lawns came from England, right? Grass lawns were the sign of, I have a manor. I have a lawn. I have grass in front of my house. I don't need a fucking farm. I have grass. I'm rich. I have grass. Keep off my grass, you peasants.
Really?
Yeah, that's really where it comes from. And then in America, right, this white picket fence around your lawn was, hey, this is my castle. This is my sanctuary. Stay off my lawn, I have a front lawn with grass. Fuck off my grass, right? Like that, you got the picture in your head of like a guy of he's a dad, he's got a family, lives in suburbia, he seeds his lawn, he runs his lawnmower over his grass, he's very proud of it. It takes effort, it takes work, it's hard to keep aesthetics like that, and I can appreciate that, but I can also appreciate the fact that it's fucking bullshit.
Yeah.
Right? That's kind of my way of thinking about it, at least, right? And you could put mulch there, right? You can cover the ground in something that isn't going to get disgusting. Mulch is fine. You could put, desert scape, right? You see those desert scape houses where, probably, if you're born and raised in Southern California and you lived in suburbia, you've probably seen front yards that have transformed from grass over to the desert scape, where it's maybe gravel, like a tan gravel with desert plants in it. It looks nice. It's still aesthetically beautiful, like grass. It's your lawn, but it's a different type of lawn.
Yes, it
right?
is.
And it's a lawn that doesn't require as much water. It's a lawn that matches the landscape where we live. And that's just smart. That's just thinking about the environment where we live, right? That's philosophically advantageous. It saves you costs on water, and it just looks good. It fits well in this environment. So that's kind of the vision I have, is just pulling back on our water usage, pulling back on the amount of grass, and either implementing mulch, or maybe if we want to continue to keep our property value high, maybe try to invest a little bit in some of that desert scape. Maybe a little bit of both would be the ideal way to go.
Mulch is not as nice as desert scape.
Doesn't look as good. It's harder to plant plants in a way which look aesthetically pleasing, but
yes, you have a big grass field in your complex, don't you?
We do. We have a park there. That would probably, is that what you're referring to?
The one right next to your house?
In front of the house, or in
the left of it? On the other side of the building from your...
Yeah, down the end of the driveway?
Yes.
Yeah, that big park there. That's all grass.
Yeah, it's huge.
It's huge. It's huge. It's really nice for the community. Probably not gonna... I probably would not be able to push anything through that would remove the grass there. Let alone, am I worried about removing the grass there? Sort of, because I think it really adds value. It's like, oh, come have your children play.
Yeah.
You know,
I thought that
play
was
in
the
the
type
park.
of grass you were thinking of removing.
I think that
A select small areas will
patches were those patches around the community you might not notice, but if you drive down my street, you know, there's little patches in front of this building and that building that are 8 by 10
Yes.
patch of grass, or 4 by 15 patch of grass, or even 4 by 4 patch of grass. Like, what is that doing there? It does nothing. It just takes water.
And a lot of that sprinkler water just hits the sidewalk
And goes down the drain.
goes down the drain.
Money down the drain.
It is terrible.
It's-
Actually, it's really like. I'm just wondering, do other countries do this type of stuff? Like, do other countries have sprinkler systems like standard every single lawn everywhere? Because I feel like there may come a day where they're all broken. And like, I don't know, like what are, like someone
I don't know, man. I mean, it's the curse of aesthetics. It's the curse of aesthetics. Aesthetics can be a blessing and a curse. That's why I believe in utility.
Yes.
That's why you're an engineer, right? Like, aesthetics, though, they make you feel. They make you feel things. The power of aesthetics made
real.
people do what they're doing. That whole thing, taking a lawn from England and putting it into a bite-sized
Very
chunk in
powerful.
America. That's a powerful concept. When you think
Yes.
about that, we didn't even know what that was. I don't know when I learned about that concept, but when I remember hearing about it, being mind-blown. Just, we're sheep. We were
Yes.
sheep led to pasture. No pun
Absolutely.
intended.
And another thing is like with a lot of people, you know, I'm an iPhone user, you're an iPhone user. A lot of people, you know, have said to me over the years, Androids have more utility. Androids, you know, you can do so much more with an Android than you could with your iPhone.
You could.
And you can.
I think maybe. But
But-
regardless.
Regardless, the aesthetic, please, the aesthetics of an iPhone, the aesthetics of the software, like, it's very powerful.
It's very powerful. It was what made Apple the most valuable company in the world.
Absolutely.
That's a powerful thing. When aesthetics, that's the thing too. If you focus on utility, but then you understand the power of form, right? Form can have a function. And in Apple's case, yeah, they were delivering an experience. That was what they did, but then they delivered it in a sleek, sexy package.
Yes.
And I mean, it's hard to resist.
Yes, it
It's
is.
really hard to
Opening an
resist.
iPhone box, like I keep my iPhone boxes.
They're beautiful. They're
beautiful
well
boxes.
designed.
Yeah, they are well designed.
They work well. They open up perfectly. It's not a hassle to get them open. It's not a hassle to pull out the instructions. It's not a hassle to pull out the phone. You don't have to work. Like, yeah, there's a little bit of trash here and there. It's like everything has plastic on it, but it's not it's not this.
Mess.
It's not a mess. It's a clean, well designed, calculated package of aesthetics and
Yes.
function and all in one. It's
Yes.
beautiful.
It is beautiful, and got them very, very rich.
Got them rich. Yes, this is a powerful concept: the marriage of utility and aesthetics.
Yes. It is a powerful concept, and it's very, very difficult to bring together. But
Yeah, it is.
once you bring that together, people will, you know, and you can implement that in a product, people will eat it up. You know, whoever wants that utility, when they see the aesthetic in combination with the utility, they'll just eat it up. But even, yeah, it's not easy to get there.
It's one of the great challenges of capitalism is to figure out a product that people are going to like, figure out a product that solves a problem
Yes.
that is appealing.
Yes.
You've got to solve problems that people care about. Problems that people care about, right? You got to put those together. If people, yeah, it could be a problem, it could be a bad problem, but if nobody cares about it, it's kind of hard to rally the forces that are required to solve it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If no one cares, oh yeah.
That's the power of aesthetics.
another good example of that, that's not necessarily aesthetics, but has something to do with it, is Elon Musk. SpaceX is about to go bankrupt. And
wow.
I've read a lot of things where they're saying it doesn't really matter because they're going to get a lot of funding from a lot of private and public sources. And
Not surprised.
And
they solve problems that are things that people care about.
Yes. I mean, they a couple weeks ago released Dart. Do you know what Dart is?
No, go ahead. Tell me.
It's meant to derail the trajectory of an asteroid in case it ever...
Okay, I heard about this concept. I didn't know what its name was.
They released their first prototype of it 2 weeks ago. And I don't know when it's going to hit the asteroid. I think in a few months. But that dude, I mean...
That's wild.
That was before he went bankrupt. So it's like... He has added so much... Like, if he can do that, I mean, it should be pretty inherent how much value added that is.
We saw what happened with the pandemic. We heard for years that people were saying, gotta watch out for a pandemic, gotta watch out for a pandemic. We had that movie with Matt Damon. I think it was called, it was something like Pandemic or Infest. What was it?
I don't remember this.
It came out in 2016. It was a pandemic movie. Virus came from a bat in China.
Really?
Yeah, in that movie. Bats tend to have a lot of diseases that humans can contract because they're mammals. Their DNA is relatively similar to ours as mammals, but they live in dank, dark caves that don't get a lot of sunlight, that don't get warm, but not from the sun, but they poop, and that poop generates energy, and it attracts a lot of nasty things, miasmic forces, if you will. And yeah, that translates into diseases. I mean, that's why bats have been feared for a long, long time throughout history, right?
Dracula?
What was he associated with? Bats.
Yes. And I've heard that bats are also the only mammals that fly.
I think that's true. I think that's correct, yeah. I think we've got some gliders out there.
Like the squirrels? Like the flying squirrels?
I think some lemurs can glide as well in Madagascar.
But bats are the only mammals that can fly.
Kind of freaky.
I've heard that that's part of the reason that they're able to spread. They spread the diseases. High viral loads.
Yeah, they can travel to a lot of different places, and then think about it. You have huge colonies of bats. They're all traveling. Then they're all coming back to each other. One of them gets something. All of them get it.
Yes.
Right? It's really easy to imagine how in a dark, dank cave, one bat that flew way out there and it got sick, it came back and got all the other bats sick.
Yes.
Whether it's with coronavirus or whether it's with whatever other diseases that people know that rabies, right? Bats, I think, are known for having rabies. You see the pictures of bats on those death metal shirts. They're
Yes.
Those are probably rabid bats. You could imagine how terrifying that would be.
Crazy animal, dude.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen the massive bats? There's bats that are this
not in real life.
Not in real life. I've only seen pictures.
Only in video, yeah. That's amazing. Those are amazing. Some of them are cute too. They have the videos. They're kind of cute sometimes, actually.
I haven't seen any of the videos.
I've seen some videos on the internet of people who have bats as pets, and damn, they're cute because they're mammals. They're like little flying dogs.
Yes. So they have more personality than a bird.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They're mammals, right? They have a completely mammalian brain, right? Birds have more of a lizard brain.
Yes.
Only, right? So mammals have developed the mammalian part of their brain, and most mammals have at least a small amount of neocortex.
What's neocortex?
That's sort of if you look at the brain and you look at the squiggly part of a human brain when it's cut in half, it's kind of on the outer edges.
Yes.
That's your neocortex, right? kind of up here, that's the top, that's the neocortex. It's all around. You know, you have your occipital lobe back here, your prefrontal lobe, temporal lobe, upper lobes, I think. God, it's been too long.
Yes, but the frontal cortex is the one that's unique to us, the size.
Yeah, the size. I mean, you do have dolphins and whales.
Okay.
They have insane neocortices that, honestly, you wonder sometimes when you look at their brains. You wonder.
They're smarter than us? They don't have these.
They don't have these. They have these. You know, they can only do this, you know?
Unfortunately.
But just because they can only do this doesn't mean they're not intelligent.
No, it does. Octopus.
You know,
Octopi?
like imagine humans before we had writing and before we had the ability to store data.
Oh my goodness.
Like, we can store data by writing it down. We can build things with our hands, but imagine humans like prior to all of that, like when we had finally developed language, when sapiens had just developed language, maybe we were trading some things. I'd say pre-trading, you know, pre-economics, the history of humans pre-economics. You could probably say that dolphins are smarter than those humans.
You could well, we didn't get actually any smarter, did we?
We went through a huge change during the cognitive revolution, right? When we were able to start talking.
200,000 years ago?
I think that was 80,000 years ago.
Okay.
I think sapiens started developing around 200,000 years ago.
Okay.
That subspecies of humans, right? Human beings have been around for about 2.5 million. I think sapiens came around about 200,000, and in cognitive revolution, that was like when we started being able to think of esoteric concepts.
Wow. How do we know that? Because of drawings?
Because of anatomy of the brain. We can see that there was this like massive change. I think it was either anatomy of the brain or the success of human beings in terms of the archaeological finds. We can tell that there were more. I have to go back and double check that. I just remember the numbers. I can't be exact, but there is some stark piece of evidence that exists that tells us that we had a huge change cognitively.
Okay.
And if you just think about humans prior to that point, I mean, I don't know, maybe we're not there to ask them like what their thoughts are on 2 + 2.
No.
Or the square root of 16.
No.
But octopi are super smart, you know, dolphins, another mammal like us, their brains are incredible. Their brains are incredible, man. They don't look like anything else that I've ever seen. They look so evolved. They just look evolved. It's incredible. It's wild.
It is pretty wild. And we can't communicate with them at all. That's pretty wild as well.
I think, you know, we can communicate with a dog, like Asha over there.
Not well.
Not well.
Like, it's weird if they were as smart as us, and then does that change anything?
Yeah, does it change? What does it change? What does it mean? What is intelligence, right? What is that? What is the point of it, right? Just to get utility and function and value, or is it about aesthetics as well, right? We're just I don't know where intelligence plays into that at all, into that set of concepts.
There's many forms of intelligence too, right? Like, it's not easy to be as intelligent in aesthetics, in implementing aesthetics and utility.
It's really hard to implement aesthetics. You got that, my friend. I know that at the school that I studied abroad at in Hungary, I was living in a dorm with a ton of Hungarian students and meeting people and talking about their majors, and I found out that they offered a major in aesthetics in Hungary.
Really?
I did not go deep with that guy who was studying that, but I just remember kind of having a hard time understanding what he was saying, and then because the accent was thick, it was heavy, I was like, what are you talking about? And then he wrote it for me.
Wow.
I'm like, aesthetics? You can major in aesthetics? That is mind-blowing.
Yes.
That is mind-blowing.
Wow.
So...
In Hungary.
In Hungary, yeah.
I wonder what aesthetics in Hungary look like.
The aesthetics of their buildings, I can tell you what that looks like.
What's that like?
There's a lot of communist
Wow.
buildings from when they were under the Iron Curtain. It's a very beautiful country. It's got a lot of water resources there.
Okay.
Shout out to Stephen Kuhn. He's a mentor of mine. He lives in Hungary. He's an American expat out there. He moved there. He saw the beauty of that place. He's a polyglot, speaks a lot of languages.
Okay.
And the people of Hungary are beautiful. You know, they're very romantic people.
Really?
They're very into those type of romantic concepts of, you know, chivalry, and, you know, they're a country that has universities that major in aesthetics, you know.
Yes.
It's an interesting place, right? It's
Yes.
They're very good in physics. A lot of Nobel winners have come out of Hungary and in the area of physics.
Wow.
So they were conquered many times
Yes.
over the years. That area was conquered by different rulers.
Aren't Hungarians not from that area?
No, they have a lot of mixed blood, right?
Okay.
So they have a lot of like the Mongolian blood that came in. They have a lot of the Ottoman blood that has come in. They have a lot of the native tribal blood that was there from the 7 tribes that formed Hungary, and a lot of the Western European blood from the Crusades, right? They're a Catholic country today.
Oh,
So,
really?
yeah, so you have a lot of these like powers and different forces that overlapped, that waves that came in from different areas and different directions, right, to form this country. So a lot of different influences.
That's a lot. It's right in the middle of Europe, isn't it?
On the Danube, right?
What's the Danube?
The Danube River is a river that hits a lot of the capitals of major countries. Budapest, Bucharest, in Germany,
Berlin?
I think it hits Berlin as well. I think it hits Belgrade.
Does it hit Prague?
I think it hits it hits Prague for sure. It hits
Really?
Prague and
So
Czech
this is
Republic.
like the river.
This is like the river.
Okay.
This is the river. Yeah. If you look at a picture of like Hungary, I think I might have a picture on LinkedIn as my cover photo, or had one there for a while. It's a picture of that river, because that river is just so important. It's so spectacular. It's so epic.
Wow. Life in rivers.
Water, life.
Yes.
In rivers, yeah. Especially for landlocked countries, right? Rivers are everything.
Yes, they are. Wow. The sea for non-landlocked.
Yeah, yeah. You get the ocean, you get the fish, you get all that other good stuff. Fresh water, it's so critical.
Very critical. And none of it's here.
What do you think? Yeah. I'm sorry, I don't know why that was so funny to me, but it's so true. No, it's not. It's not here. That's why we need to invest in those drought-resistant landscapes.
Yes, yes, straight up. Less trees, unfortunately.
Yeah, I hope we can keep the trees. I'm a tree hugger in that sense.
Do you
I
think
love trees.
Don't trees take water too?
They do. I think a lot of trees get their water a bit better than grass does.
I would assume so.
I think they can go deeper into the ground and suck up water that's just, kind of been sucked into the ground. They provide so many important functions too.
Like shade?
Shade, stopping wind from just blowing everything over.
Yes.
Wood, right? You can have wood.
Yes.
There's this concept called, I think it's called urban harvesting. I have to double check. It's basically a concept. I know it contains the word urban, and it has to do with trees that fall down in urban environments. And it's basically when a tree falls down, sometimes these lumber yards will go and pick up a tree from within an urban environment, and they can resell the timber from that tree. So trees in an urban environment can still provide value to a society.
Wow.
Right? They can still provide that value, right? Sometimes they just get shoved in a wood chipper if they're maybe just like a jacaranda. They're a small little tree that has, a lot of bright blossoms on it. and you can shove one of those into a wood chipper, make mulch. Put the mulch back onto your grass. Turn the sprinklers off, put the mulch on your grass. But if it's a big old eucalyptus tree, which we know a lot about being UCSD students,
Yes.
you could chop that sucker down and turn that into a big piece of lumber.
Yes. Are eucalyptus trees native to Southern California?
They were brought here for the railroad ties that they could provide for the military.
Railroad ties? What do you
Railroad
mean?
ties. So those big logs that connect railroad tracks, those are called railroad ties. And that's why the eucalyptus trees are here in Southern California, because we've got that railroad that goes from Southern California all the way up to Northern California.
Wow.
So that's why they were planted here, so that the military could harvest those trees and use them for the railroads that it needed to transport goods back in the 30s and 40s. That's crazy, right?
That's crazy.
Yeah.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah. Wild stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
using wild stuff for utility, value, and function.
They're all synonyms. They all come together.
They all come together. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, Alex,
Karosh, congrats.
congrats to you.
Congrats on 50, bro.
50. It's been a good ride.
To many more.
To many more.
Yes.
Yes.
We're having fun.
We're having fun. We're having a good time.
I guess that's it.
Yes.
Okay. Cheers.
Cheers.